So downsizing means something different to everyone. In some cases, downsizing means moving from your really large home to a smaller bungalow. In some cases, it means looking at condo options. Maybe you've got a family member who wants you to be closer and they have room for you and they want you to become part of their household. The other option, and a really good marriage that we have here, is for people who are downsizing and they're looking at retirement communities. So those are the things that I come in and I talk to you about. I want to introduce myself. My name is Andrea Hilton. I am a realtor, real estate agent, and I work with a team. We are called the Hilton Home Team. And one of the main focuses that I like to work on with people, one of my main focuses is working with people who are transitioning from their longtime home, downsizing, but I don't like the term downsizing. I like the term right-sizing. So when I say right-sizing, I mean what fits your life today? What fits you today? And so many times when we talk about real estate, we're talking about what you're gonna buy next, what you're gonna buy next. What about when you get to that forever home that you've been in and now your children have moved on, they have families and homes of their own, your extended family's not coming over so frequently for their dinner parties anymore because they're going to their children's homes. They are having their own lives, and you're left in this big house. And what you have in this big house is a lot of memories. So you don't want to leave it because you've heard your whole life. You want to own a home. You wait till you are mortgage free. So they're waiting until you're mortgage free for all these years, and now you're mortgage free and you forget that there was an end goal in that. And the end goal was to have that equity to be able to plan for the rest of your life. So we have to start talking about downsizing, right-sizing. And that is this light is in my eye, I'm trying to avoid it. And right-sizing is a really tough decision. I don't know where to start. I've been collecting stuff in my house for 40 years. I still have my kids' baby rattles and scrapbooks. I don't know where to start. Will I have enough money to move on to something else? Because I haven't bought a home in 40, 50 years sometimes. So the decision is usually not a quick one. What we see is this takes sometimes a year, sometimes 2 years, before we can actually finally make that decision. And one of the things that I like to do to help people through that is provide services for them, provide information. So you know that you need to make a move. You're still in good health. You still want to be in your home. You still want to be with the memories, but you've got snow to shovel in the winter now. And as much as we all have the mindset that we're still that young person who could shovel snow for 2 hours, we can't do it. Those stairs to run up and down to do the laundry are getting a little bit more difficult. All of the stuff that we've accumulated is overwhelming. So what do? We say, oh, well, I can still do it, so I'm going to continue for a little while. And all of these things add up. So what it is my job to do as a realtor is build that relationship with you so that we have some trust, so that we can talk about those things that we need to do. It's my job to give you resources such as we're going to chat with today. It's my job to talk about what different types of downsizing there are. So downsizing means something different to everyone. In some cases, downsizing means moving from your really large home to a smaller bungalow. In some cases, it means looking at condo options. Or maybe you've got a family member who wants you to be closer and they have room for you and they want you to become part of their household. The other option, and a really good marriage that we have here, is for people who are downsizing and they're looking at retirement communities. And this is a retirement community. This is not a retirement home that some people want to have in their mindset. So those are the things that I come in and I talk to you about. I don't ask you, okay, when are we going to sell your house? I ask you, okay, what is your plan moving forward and how can I help facilitate that? So I'm going to hopefully be able to give you the information that you need to make that decision about where to go, where is the best place for you to go. So here I've already talked about these options. I've talked about bungalows, condos, living with family and friends. And I think that our guests are going to talk about some other options as well and some other considerations. So Vicky Bata is a guest that I have invited. She is with Horizon Partners. She is a financial planner, and she works with seniors, planning out those next steps in their life. So she's worked with them perhaps as they amass their wealth, and now she is working with them in how to use their equity. And Vicky wrote an incredible article about changing your mindset from going to your home, your family home, to actually a retirement community. So because Vicky really wanted to be here, she thought it was really valuable. She was going to be out of the country, but she said, can we do an interview? Can we do an interview? I really want to get my message to these people and show them that there's support for what they're going through. So I sat down with Vicky before she left, and I had read her article and I was pretty impressed with it. So we pretended we were on the Dr. Phil show. I was Dr. Phil. I was asking the questions.
So my name is Vicky Bata. I'm a financial planner at Horizon Partners. I've been in the business for just about 23 years. So what we do is we work with essentially high net worth families. I do a lot of tax and estate planning. My main focus is planning. So we do wealth management. That's not part of what I focus on in my business. That's my business partner. My main goal is to sit down with clients, to work on their financial plans, prepare their estate plans, help them with their wills and insurances and things like that. And so that's what I sort of focus on a day-to-day basis.
In your article, you mentioned that transitioning into a retirement community is one of the most emotionally complex financial decisions someone can make. Why do you think it's so difficult for people, even when the move makes practical sense?
So change is hard. Change is really hard in any part of your life. I think if you think of, even when you transitioned, when you were maybe upgrading your house, and when you're raising your children and you let go of that house, that smaller home that you had all these memories and you raised your family and you had all of these family gatherings in. And even though you're moving on to like a larger space for your family, you're still leaving behind all those memories in that little home. So imagine what it's like for somebody who's transitioning away from this home that it took their life to pay off. They've put their blood, sweat, and tears in it. They've maybe had broken bones in the home. They've, cuts and bruises and scrapes. They've helped raise their grandkids in the house. And so there's so much attachment. I think that I don't think that we're giving it enough credit, that's probably the hardest decision that you ever make, because you're basically, it's a loss, right? So that's why I feel like the change is so hard, transitioning from your home into a retirement home.
You talk about something called the endowment mindset, how we place greater value on our homes because of their emotional significance. Can you explain how this mindset plays into the hesitation people might feel when they're considering a move?
So, in financial planning, we have to place a great amount of education and emphasis on understanding the psychological barriers that clients face. It's actually a huge part of financial planning. It's a component of helping clients get to where they want to go and achieve their goals, but then also understand what mindsets might be holding them back so that we can then quietly educate and reframe things. So with the endowment mindset, again, that goes kind of hand in hand with why change is so hard, is because we place a great amount of sentiment on things. And I would understand, probably as real estate agents experience this oftentimes when you're in a position to sit down with one of your clients and sort of come up with a market value of what you want the list price to be for your home. And I'm sure it's spoken a lot. You really can't put sentimental value because it's only worth it to you. So someone else is not going to pay for your memories. And so I think with the endowment mindset, it makes it really hard for anybody essentially selling a home, because we're stuck in that sort of mindset of letting it go. When something has sentimental value to us, we place a great emphasis on what it is worth to us.
So you offer some powerful tips for shifting our perspective, like focusing on what we're gaining rather than losing. Can you walk us through how you help clients reframe the idea of moving into something more positive?
Yeah. So what we do in a scenario like this is we, help our clients reframe how they're looking at the situation. So, as an example, especially here in Northern Ontario, our winters are really tough. And so there's, driving around, the removing of the snow, the fall cleanup, preparing for winter, the spring cleanup, which is a lot of work, and all of these things that are, make home ownership burdensome. And as we age, those things become really hard to do. And I think that it's no different than, when you're doing something that you're passionate about, essentially like raising children, for example, things are really hard, but they seem easy to you because it's something that you're passionate about, the sleepless nights and all of these things, but we do it and we do it and we're tired. We do it because it's what we love our children. So it's the same thing again with our home. You'll see your neighbors putter around in the yard. I know my neighbor, he's in his mid 70s, and, he and his wife are outside all the time. They're constantly cleaning up, and they're, backyard, front yard, shoveling and things like that. So, they're tired, and you can tell they're tired. So I think when we talk about these tips, I think we have to focus on, with our clients, we focus on reframing, how we look at it. So, wouldn't it be so nice if you're a snowbird that you can travel and you don't have to turn your water off in your house in the winter when you're gone, or you don't need to worry about having the snow removal come in. All things that are, you don't have to worry about cooking. You don't have to worry about shopping. All of these things give you more time to enjoy your life, to travel, and to do all of these other things, because you don't have a home to take care of. So we just kind of spend some time, delicately talking about those things, reframing and helping them with that sort of mindset.
One of the most interesting sections in your piece touches on representative bias, essentially how outdated stereotypes shape how people perceive retirement communities. Can you share how you can help clients overcome those mental images?
Yeah, so representative bias deals with the stereotypes that we face that, make it challenging for us to see things for what they really are. So with retirement homes, there's a lot of stereotypes surrounding what they're like. And so the best way to really combat that representative bias is to educate yourself and go and tour these places and take a look at, what they have to offer and what your life would be like. Oftentimes they'll even offer stays, so you can sort of have a little staycation and just live there and experience what it's like to be a resident there. And one I really like is, especially people in retirement homes, they love telling their stories. So they love talking about their experience. And they'll tell you if they don't like something, they'll tell you what they don't like. So you're going to really get a very authentic, real, point of view as to what it's like to live there. As an example, I brought my grandmother in last year, and we were touring homes together. And pretty much in every home that we toured, there was somebody that was just eyeballing us. Oh, these are new people. What's going on? And so people get excited. And I just graciously said, would you like to take us on a tour and show us what you like about the place and whatnot? There's always somebody that's willing to help. And I think that no one is trying to sell you anything in that scenario. They're just there honestly sharing their feedback. And I think that's the best way to deal with representative bias for sure.
You also talk about something called projection bias, the idea that we assume our future selves will be just like our current selves. How does this kind of a thinking affect someone's ability to plan for their future needs?
So projection bias is a huge one. And in fact, in my opinion, it's probably one of the biggest hurdles for clients that are transitioning from their home into a retirement home, because you're making future decisions based on today. So you're making the decision about whether or not you should stay in your home in the future based on how you feel and you know how your body feels today. So going back to an example of, you know, the yard work is hard, but I can still do it. Or the snow shoveling and the snow removal and the landscaping, I'm still enjoying it. But what happens if mobility becomes an issue and those things become virtually almost impossible? So now you have to pay someone to come in and do it. But then what if there's stairs in the house? And so, yeah, mobility becomes an issue. The house then becomes it's not your safe place anymore. So when we're dealing with projection bias, we really have to look into the future and we have to ask ourselves a couple of questions like, you know, again, what would happen if something happened and mobility became an issue? Or, you know, if something happened and I need extra care in my home, does my financial plan support those extra costs that, you know, we need to have somebody come in and, you know, help with the day to day? And so those kinds of things. So we really have to be aware of, you know, helping our clients sort of see the future and the what if scenarios that we plan for. So in planning, that's what we're doing all the time is we're planning for what if scenarios. And if those scenarios happen, are we okay? So that we're never caught off guard, so that we're never kind of in a situation where we're stuck to make a decision out of necessity. We always want to be in control of those decisions. We want them to come naturally. We don't want them to come out of necessity.
Now, for those who aren't ready to make a move right now, but want to stay ahead of the curve, what kind of planning do you recommend that they start with? What does being proactive actually look like?
So being proactive in this situation means you're essentially taking the control into your hands, right? So you've decided that you maybe don't want to move, but you know that the time is eventually coming. And so you want to be proactive, that's the best case scenario, right? So going back to, again, you don't want to be forced into a decision. You also want to be part of the decision. You also don't want, you know, your kids to be making that decision for you, and your kids don't want to be making that decision for you either. So when you're proactive, maybe you're going to all of the residences in the city and you're writing down a list of pros and cons in each. And then you have in your mind that, you know, if the time were to come where we need to make this transition, this place I really feel is the most suitable for me and my needs. And, you know, I love this place and this is why. Where in a situation where it's out of necessity, you know, maybe your kids or whoever's helping you might choose a different place for you to reside because maybe you're in hospital or whatever the case may be, and they're having to make the decision for you. You really being proactive means that you're a part of the decision. And so really essentially what that means is doing your homework and taking that confidence and writing again a list of things that you want in a place. I think at that stage in your life as well, I think you should have what you want. I think you should have all of the amenities that, you know, are really going to speak to you. I mean, if you're a real social person, then I think that you should be looking at, you know, the residence that has the most social activities that speak to you. And so kind of doing your homework in advance with the mindset that there's no pressure on you. There's no pressure on me to make a decision. I'm just window shopping. And I think that is the best way to stay proactive in that scenario.
Vicky, you mentioned that people sometimes assume their kids will step in when the time comes, but that could be a complicated conversation. How do you guide families in having those honest discussions early before it becomes a crisis?
So yeah, that's a really interesting question. I think for a lot of our clients, the conversation as to what they plan on doing at some point has already been had. So I do have a lot of clients that have no desire to live with their children, and their children would like it, you know? And then I have some clients that would love to live with their children, and their children are like, Mom, Dad, you know, like, we have grandkids now, or, you know, we're still raising kids ourselves, or, you know, there's no space and there's no, you know, we'd have to retrofit. And so those conversations have usually typically already come up before. So I've never really had a meeting with a client where they've told me that they would really like to live with their children, and could you help me have that conversation with my daughter? That doesn't really happen. So what I would suggest, and with estate planning, I always say this to my elder clients, is especially when we're doing will meetings and we're reviewing the will, because it happens often enough in retirement. We start to do early gifting with, you know, our kids and things like that. So then we have to, you know, equalize the estate in the will, because maybe we've gifted the cottage to one of our kids. We have two other kids. And so we're looking at the will a lot. And so we're estate planning a lot as you get older. So what I often will recommend with our clients is, I'm a huge proponent of having family meetings. So, you know, we have a list of things that you want to talk about. Where's our will? Where is this? Where is that? This is what I would like, you know, all these kinds of things. And if that conversation you want to have is kind of in the air, but maybe you haven't had it yet, then add it to the list. You know, it's a family meeting. We're talking about all of these things. Mom and Dad want you to know what your inheritance might look like, and, you know, what we plan on doing with the cottage. And let's add in there, you know, what would happen if, you know, one of us couldn't live in the home anymore and we need a little bit of extra care, you know, would one of you be open to that? And, you know, so if it's kind of an uncomfortable conversation and you're not sure really how to have it, then add it to an agenda so that it's not the main focus. It's just an action item. And often children want to know these things with their parents. They, you know, that they want to have these open discussions. I think they're really helpful. Those family meetings are very successful.
Vicky, you've worked with so many clients navigating this stage of life. What changes have you seen in people once they begin to explore their options in a serious way? Perhaps visiting communities or running financial scenarios?
Yeah, so this is a really good question. I think what needs to be known in this scenario as well is this is the biggest financial asset that you hold, right? So, you know, you've lived in your house for 30 years. It's got a very large value to it. So if we are transitioning into a retirement home, money is not really the issue. So we've done the modeling, you know, in many scenarios. I have two plans for our clients. I have one if you're in a home and one if you stay in your house. And when they both work and we show them that they both work, then we can sort of move that to the side and focus on the soft issues, the issues that are really, you know, sort of getting us stuck to make the decision. So once we have discovered that, you know, the decision is an 80-20, so it's 80% emotional, 20% financial, and we can move that to the side, then we can move forward with, you know, being proactive. And so I'll give you an example of one client that I have. And, you know, she's a widow, which is a likely scenario as well. And she's in her home and, you know, very able-bodied and extremely social, and lots of social committees, lots of volunteerism. You know, she had a busy social calendar. I always joke, you have a busier life than I do. And so she remained busy, and, you know, she wasn't really open to the idea, but we really tried to encourage her to sort of be proactive and do your homework and go tour you know, a whole bunch of places in Sudbury. So her daughter came, her children lived out of the country, some in Canada, some out of the country. Her daughter was in town for a holiday weekend. She took her to all of these places. We had put together packages, and she, you know, kind of turned her nose up and she said, well, yeah, but I'm still good. You know, why would I? You know, why would I? I'm still, you know, And, the children really it made them nervous. We really want, Mom, you can still travel, you can still do all of these things, but, you can live in a retirement home and you don't need to care for your house anymore. And so what eventually happened is, she missed her kids so much, she decided that she was going to join one of them out of province. So she decided to move out of province to be closer to her one daughter. And so they continued the search there. And she found a lovely place. And she is beside herself with how happy she is and how fun this place is. Because see, before, her friends, they were starting to get sick. So she was the healthiest one. And I know a lot of people can relate to this too, because I have a lot of clients in this scenario where maybe they're a widow. And so their friends are a big part of their social circle. And then their friends start to, maybe not be as mobile and not be able to join in as much. So she really started to see her social life sort of shift, and she started to become a little lonely. And this is where I would explain to her, you're going to meet new people. You're going to meet, and now as we sit today, she said, I wish I would have done this sooner. And it just makes me so happy because I knew the whole time that she would thrive. But it's not about what I know or about what her kids know. It was about, she had to get there on her own, and it was her decision on her time, and, being proactive and all of those things, and moving before it was a necessity. All of those things just played out perfectly for her.
So one last question. If there's one message that you want everyone in the room to take away when it comes to preparing for this kind of transition, what would it be?
So I don't have one particular message. It's more of a theme. And so that would be some words of encouragement by way of recognize that it's hard. Acknowledge that, live with that. It's hard. This is sad. This is emotional. I don't think that we should rush ourselves in decisions by just avoiding what hurts about it. So live in that and talk about it, share that, and then be kind to yourself if it's taking you some time. And absolutely don't rush. That's the best advice that anybody ever gives anybody. We give that to our kids. Everyone gives that advice. Don't rush into anything, right? Take your time. And so that's a really big, huge, takeaway for me. And also, most importantly, don't avoid the topic because it's uncomfortable. Avoidance is a real thing. We avoid uncomfortable things. We avoid things that are hard. We avoid making decisions that are hard. That's the human nature. So acknowledge that it's hard and don't avoid it. And, bring everybody that's in your circle involved and talk about it. Talk about what you are hesitant about, what you don't like about it. Oftentimes we can't help if we don't know what's really concerning you. And so be honest. And so give it some thought. Keep a notepad beside your bed. And as the thoughts come to you, write them in as they come naturally, and just give yourself grace and patience.
So in planning this event, I thought, what are the most important things that people who are making a decision about a huge real estate and life planning, more than a real estate plan, it's a life plan. And who could give us the best advice? So obviously, we heard from Vicki, who is an estate, or who is a financial planner. And then I wanted to invite somebody else who knows a lot about estate planning, about the laws of this planning, wills, and also real estate law. So this brings me to Marissa Sarazin, who is one of my favorite referrals that I use for real estate law. She is a partner at Weaver Simmons. Another of Marissa's focuses is wills and estate planning.
Well, thank you, Andrea, for that marvelous introduction. So my name's Marissa. I am a local lawyer here in Sudbury. So one of my main areas of practice is real estate, So if you're looking to sell your house or buy a house, once it's completed with the real estate agents, the paperwork comes to us, the lawyers, to make sure you know exactly what you're buying or exactly what you're selling. And then I also practice wills and estates. So a very important part of my practice is meeting with folks of the Sudbury area and drafting their wills and powers of attorney. So what we'll end up doing today is I'll talk briefly about wills and powers of attorney, and I'm going to try to debunk a couple myths that you might have heard in the past about wills and powers of attorney. So first off, who thinks you need a will after you sold your house? What do we think? Of course you do. That's a perfect answer. So I often get clients come into the office and they tell me, I just sold my house. Why do I need a will? Well, you still own other things, right? So typically after you've sold your house, you still have your bank account, you have the money that you got when you sold your house, and perhaps you have, vehicles, some personal property, some artwork, things like that. So the will is the perfect legal document that is going to describe what happens to your belongings when you pass away. So it's very, very important. We're actually seeing a big uptick in wills these days because there is a lot of fraud. So what that means is obviously a lot of people are hesitant to deal with a person's assets after they passed away if they do not have a will. And the reason for that is they don't know who's in charge, right? So how many of you here have wills already? Okay, that's good, amazing, okay. So for your will, typically if you were to go see a lawyer, the meeting process would be to talk about your things and to talk about what you own, right? So oftentimes we're asking questions about your investments, about your bank accounts. We're not asking that because we're nosy. We're asking those questions because we need to incorporate it in your will and we want to make sure we're including everything. A couple extra points that you have to think about as well is who's going to be in charge of your stuff when you pass away. And that person is called the executor or an estate trustee. And I'm sure you guys have heard that before. It's a big responsibility. So whoever you're picking as your executor or your estate trustee, they're going to be doing a lot of work. They can get paid for it, but it's a big commitment. So if you're picking someone, good rule of thumb, have a conversation with them before. So similar to the presentation or the video that we just saw with our other presenter, she spoke about having family conversations. I echo that thought. When it comes to estate planning, wills and estates, it's a great idea to speak to your children and your family members about it, often because it helps you make decisions, right? Oftentimes, you want to make sure that your children, your family members are protected and they're not having to deal with this additional stress. So by having a will, it makes it a lot easier. It streamlines the process. You get to pick who gets your belongings and you don't have to worry. Now, one myth that you probably heard in the past, the government gets everything if I don't have a will. That is not the case. So there's actually a piece of legislation, so a law in Ontario, that says if you die without a will, there's a list of people that are entitled to receive your belongings. That list of people is spouse, if you're legally married, does not include common law, so that's an important distinction to make. A lot of people think a common law partner or spouse is a legally married spouse. It is not in our case. So spouse first, children second, if not children, brothers and sisters, parents, so it eventually finds someone. It is not the government. What you do have to know for estate planning purposes is there is an estate administration tax. It's called the probate tax. So you do have to pay some money to the government, but it's not everything going to the government. Does that make sense? Okay. Another document that you guys have probably heard in the past, powers of attorney. Very, very important documents. So the powers of attorney are very different than the will. It's two separate documents. Will, remember, that's when you pass away. Powers of attorney is when you're still alive. And the key distinction, you're still alive, but just mentally incapable of making a decision for yourself. There's one for personal care, so that would be the person making healthcare decisions on your behalf. And then one for property, which is known as finance. So the person who goes to the bank to help you pay your bills, that helps take care of your assets if you're not mentally able to do that. Oftentimes, I also get the question, if I have a power of attorney, can my power of attorney deal with my estate when I'm dead? What do you guys think? You guys are spot on. The answer is no. So it's two very different documents. And that's why it's very important to have both of them, because God forbid you don't, what would happen without a power of attorney is kind of scary. It's someone from the government that would appoint someone on your behalf to act as your power of attorney. It might be your family members, it might not. So that's why there's such an importance to draft these powers of attorney. Fun fact of the day as well, you can actually draft a power of attorney without a lawyer. I don't recommend it, obviously, because that's my bread and butter. But on the Ministry of the Attorney General here in Ontario, they have these power of attorney packets. One for healthcare, one for finance, that you could fill out on your own if you wanted to. So if you don't have a power of attorney, and maybe you don't want to speak to a lawyer just yet, you can always draft these powers of attorney on your own as well. The key point I will tell you, if you plan on doing that, you need 2 people to sign with you. And those 2 people can't be your family members. They have to be 2 independent individuals. So say, for example, I'm drafting my power of attorney. I can pick 2 of you here today to be my witnesses because I don't know you in a personal capacity, right? But if I were to pick my mom and my sister to sign off with me, that's a big no-no. That document is not valid. Does that make sense? Okay. And it's different for the will. The will, there is these will kits out there, but the problem with the will kits is they're often drafted in different provinces and different countries. So when we talk about wills and powers of attorney, it's for Ontario. Every province across Canada has different laws. So what I do is I draft those documents in accordance with the laws in Ontario. Kind of cool, right? So if you were ever to move elsewhere, say for example, you're moving to Alberta or New Brunswick, for example, is your will and powers of attorney still valid? The answer is no, they are not. So it's often a good idea to speak to somebody in that area as well if you ever plan on moving. Does anybody have any questions about wills and powers of attorney so far?
You just reassured me a lot.
Yes, yes. And you know what? It's super important because at least you can write down what you want, right? You're making sure everybody else is respecting your wishes. And if you don't do it, then it's the government that picks for you. Which is not, I mean, if it was me, I wouldn't want that. I would want to be able to pick who I want to essentially do that. So kind of to summarize everything, it is very important to get wills and powers of attorney. If you already have one, fantastic, you're one step ahead of the game. But keep in mind, it's a good idea to look at it every so often to make sure it's still what you want. Sometimes, you know, throughout our lives, we change, we mature, our kids get older, our kids move away. It's always a great idea to talk about changing those things if that has happened to you. I think there was a question back here.
What if you're not dead? What happens when that happens?
Yeah, so you would say, for example, you're still alive right now and you wanted to prepare in the event that you're not mentally capable of making a decision. Yeah, so you can definitely consult with a lawyer or you can fill out those government forms for your powers of attorney. So if it does ever happen that you're incapable, you're protected.
I'm not incapable yet.
Yeah, but you never know, right? That's the difficulty with growing up, yeah.
That really scares me, okay.
Yeah, so you can definitely prepare that in advance. Us as lawyers, we can only meet with you guys when you're capable. So right now,
I'm capable
yeah, for sure. So I could meet with you. If someone came in and they had a late diagnosis with Alzheimer's, I couldn't meet with them, right? Because they're not capable to give me instructions. So it's a good thing to think about it earlier on, because if it gets point or too far past, then we can't help you. And that doesn't help anybody, right? So it's good to think about it ahead.
It is.
Yeah. Is there any other questions in the audience?
I was wondering, one of my child, one of the girls divorced,
Yeah.
and the common law that she's leaving everything to him and he's leaving everything to her, but they both owned everything. But what about the 2 kids?
Sometimes that's up to the individual, right? So there's nothing in the law that says it is mandatory to leave anything to your kids unless you're supporting them financially. So say, for example, you're paying them a monthly allowance of $1,000 a month. You're paying all their bills, and you were to decide not to leave them anything in your will. They can sue your estate. It's called a dependency claim. So they would essentially say, I should have got something because they kept paying me these years. But say, for example, you were not doing that, you have no obligation to leave it to any of your family members. I have clients that leave everything to charities, and that's perfectly fine. It's whatever you guys want. It's your will. Don't ever make anybody make decisions for you or force you into making decisions, right? And that's an important distinction too. If you guys come into my office and I'm meeting with you for a will intake, and your kids come with you, I actually kick them out. I tell them I have to speak to the client individually, and the reason for that is to make sure they're not being forced by anybody to essentially draft their will. Unfortunately, there's a lot of fraud. I'm sure all of you are aware. They're targeting a lot of people, so we have to be very, very careful. And it's not out of the possibility that sometimes there is individuals that force some to change their wills, right? So I like to meet with the clients individually to make sure I'm getting the instructions directly from them. So if you leave here today with one little tidbit of information, is that we're all here to help you guys. We're always here. If you ever have any questions about anything, there's some cards that we're going to hand out at the end, so you can definitely contact us and we can talk to you about it as well. And if you don't have a will, plant a little bug in your ear to maybe think about getting one, because it will help you in the long run and it will help your family members most of all. So, well, thank you everybody for having me today.
We have moved through the chain of people that I would refer you to, but we have not completed the chain of your decision making with regard to where you're gonna go. So one of the people that I would love to introduce you to is Christina Case. Christina Case is actually a staff member here. I don't know your exact title off the top of my head. Retirement Living Consultant for Chartwell at Meadowbrook. And I have had the opportunity a number of times to speak with Christina. A number of my clients, including my mom, have come to Chartwell, and the retirement living community is not what we think it is. So I want to turn this over to Christina so she can give you a little overview.
Thank you, Andrea, for hosting your event here with us today. We really appreciate it, and thanks, Marissa, for coming as well. Thanks to everybody for coming down and joining us today. I myself am a retirement living consultant. I have a partner here as well, Emily. We're here to help answer your questions. I know some of you are coming from our apartment side, so if you have any questions about retirement living with more support, we're happy to help you. Here at Meadowbrook, we've got townhomes, apartments, as well as supportive living, so different levels of care, and we're here to break the stigma about retirement living and know that it's very different compared to long-term care. We're here to have fun, make new friends, let go of the responsibilities that owning your own home brings, and really retiring and having a great time. So they have covered a lot of the things that we talk about during our tours here. We often see our our residents come in with their family members on several tours. This isn't a decision that you make overnight. It can take years sometimes, and we're happy to help you walk through those steps and make it easier for you. So if anybody is interested, we will be, we're happy to give you a quick tour of some of our studios, our 1-bedrooms, and a lot of you are familiar with the things that we offer here in the common areas, our bistro. We've got lots of activities, our buses that you're able to join, get out in the community. And then we work with a lot of respected experts in their field. So we're happy to refer you to those people if you need help in real estate, healthcare, lawyers, that sort of thing. That's what we're here to do, to help make this decision easier. So we've offered some coffee, water, snacks, so you're welcome to stay and mingle. Emily will be here with me to answer some of your questions if you have any about retirement living.
Thank you to everybody who's here listening to us, and I hope everybody was able to take away a little piece of information. I know I was. So as a real estate agent who works with people who are downsizing, transitioning out of their main home, a big part of what I do has nothing to do with selling your house. A really big part of what I do is having the people and knowing who to refer you to. So in addition to these people who I would probably refer you to prior to you selling your house, so that you can formulate that plan for where you want to go. Once you do make that decision to sell your house, I have other referrals that I would make for you. So I don't say, okay, this is what your house is worth. I'll see you in a week when I put it on the market. It doesn't happen like that. I'm going to come in, I'm going to meet with you. I'm going to ask you if you have things settled with your estate. I'm going to ask you if you've spoken to a financial planner. Sometimes we're overwhelmed with what we have in our house. I'm going to make a recommendation for how we're going to downsize some of our stuff, and maybe that's going to require a professional. So I'm going to give you a referral for that. When you get to the point where your house, you have a contract, well, I'm going to refer a lawyer who does real estate law. You need somebody to help you move. Well, I'm going to make that referral. Or maybe we start talking and you're not ready, but you still want somebody to help with your lawn care. Or maybe you want somebody who's going to help you get your house prepared and do some cleaning. I've got all of those people to refer you to, and that's something that I can do to support you and help you while you make this decision. So, so I think that we can put together a really good support team, and we realize, I think everybody in this support team realizes, this is not an overnight decision, but you want to lean on these people. You want to get their advice. You want to build a relationship so that you do have a trusting relationship with them. And I think that everybody who's here today is starting some portion of that journey, and we appreciate you being here. I do need to say thank you so much to my guests who took the time to be here today with us, wore microphones so that we could put this presentation out for future uses. I want to say thanks to Chartwell for so graciously hosting us here, and I want to invite everyone to please have a snack, have a coffee, chat with each other, chat with our experts. The other thing that I have is I have some gift bags for everyone, and I have a draw. So I'm going to hand out the gift bags while we're here. I have 20 of them. If I have more than 20 people, I'll have to get you fighting over it. Now I have some gift bags, but I also have a couple of draws for door prizes. Horizon Partners, Vicky Bada actually provided one of them, and we have provided one as well. I also have some things for my gracious speakers here. So I'm going to say if anybody has any questions for me, please ask them. Otherwise, please stick around and enjoy some time. Fill out a ballot. We're going to do that draw as soon as everybody's filled one out. I can bring some pens around and the ballots if you like. And I want to thank you so much for joining me today.